Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Leanne Mallet and I am the Registered Training Organisation Manager for Meditech Training College. And today's webinar is going to be on the topic of behaviour support plans. But before we get started, I just would like to do some housekeeping. So during the session, Lauren is going to be doing a presentation. That presentation might take a little bit longer than our previous webinars. It might go for about 30 to 40 minutes. And what we tend to do is hold off the questions until the end. But if you have a question during the presentation, we encourage you to use the chat room just to type any questions that you have, and we can, refer to that as we go. But whilst I've got the floor, I just want to plug our community of practice that we have created using a closed private Facebook group. I've put the link in the chat box. This is only for support workers that work for Meditech staffing. Okay, the idea is that it is a community of practice where you can go to for support at any time, and the support is around building your skills and knowledge. So please feel free to click on the link and join the group. Also, the recording of all of these sessions will be promoted in that community, as well as further professional development opportunities. So I encourage you to join us. Okay, so without any further ado, I would love to introduce the lovely, vivacious, passionate, knowledgeable, intelligent case manager that we have, Lauren Wilson, who has volunteered today to do this presentation, which I'm sure you will find really helpful. So I think that's about it from me. I don't think I've missed anything. And I think on that note, Lauren, over to you.
Hi, everyone. And wow, what a plug that was. Don't know how I'm going to get back out the door after that. Before we begin, guys, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of Meditech Training College, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, and their connections to the land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people today. I'm currently on Dharawal country, so that's my home soil. So without further ado, let's get into this. So what is a behaviour? So this diagram really illustrates the importance of really knowing and understanding the people that come into our care. So the tip of the iceberg represents behaviours, and the large bottom part of the iceberg under that water represents their feelings, their needs, their thoughts, and their memories. So this really shows the relationship between the feelings, needs, and wants of a person. But most of what we see on a day-to-day basis are these behaviours. But again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The underlying causes, feelings, and needs are all underneath that surface. And these are the things that we need to be able to identify using our skills. So those of us trained in the industry are trained to see negative behaviour as a sign of an unmet need. If an individual is agitated, combative, it's because he or she has a need that's not being met. Perhaps it's pain, boredom, overstimulation, the need for rest or sleep. I know I get a little bit cranky when I haven't had much sleep. But the inability to communicate results in an acting out. So because they cannot communicate their unmet need, this is when we see that sort of behaviour. Now, it's our role as the workers to really piece out what need is being expressed. So if an individual is combative, we are trained to back up or reduce that demand on them. Maybe a different approach and perhaps a different time is also needed. Sometimes the combative behaviour calls for a different person to fulfill the activity, which is okay. Sometimes an objective and trained observer can see that unmet need where the family caregiver could not. So a really great example there is if you're working with these clients day in and day out, and you're just like, oh, that's just John. That's just John. Why is it just John? It may take another support worker. It may take a case manager to come in and go, hey, what's going on there? right? So that's where it's really, really important that as a team, and that is what Meditech is, we are a team. It's really important that as a team, we work together to reduce all of these behaviors and provide that effective communication to give our clients the best quality support. So there's a few different types of behaviors. The term maladaptive or dysfunctional behavior is a term you probably will encounter. And I'm going to be honest, they're not ones that I particularly love. And thankfully, they're not really terms that are used as much as they would have been, say, 10 years ago. But you're still going to probably see them on assessments and different documentation. So, what is a maladaptive behavior? A maladaptive or dysfunctional behavior is simply a behavior that you don't want to see. It could be hitting, it could be absconding, it could be self-harming, the use of drugs and alcohol, it could be spitting, biting, kicking, it could be screaming, it could be self-isolating. It is ultimately any behavior you're going to try to reduce that can be viewed as a negative behavior, which can either harm the person or others. So when we look at behaviors, if somebody is just yelling, do you think that that could harm themselves or harm others? Please use the chat box.
Pretty quiet in the chat box, guys. If you want to think about
is.
that, don't hesitate to add anything to the chat box and we can come back to it.
Yeah,
Cindy
perfect.
is typing. Thank you. So what was the question again, Lauren? Could you just repeat that?
The question that I asked was, if a person is just yelling, can that sort of behavior be deemed to be one of these maladaptive behaviors? Are they going to put themselves or somebody at risk of harm through yelling?
People thinking lots of things there and starting to write some answers, but they're not out just yet.
That's okay. I might keep going until we see something there.
Okay, Rabi has said, Michael has said sometimes, depends on the situation. Rosemary has said no, maybe that's just how they communicate their thoughts. And Rabi has said yelling and screaming would be considered as maladaptive.
Yeah. So again, it is very situational. So although if I got so frustrated and I just started screaming for the sake of screaming, is it pro-social? Is it something that is socially accepted? But am I going to put myself or somebody else at risk by doing so? So let's compare maladaptive to adaptive behaviors. An adaptive behavior allows individuals to adapt in a positive manner to various situations. It's a functional adjustment to a particular behavior. So adaptive behavior creates a condition where the individual can truly develop and grow. So in our day-to-day life, if a particular behavior is constructive and productive, it can be considered as adaptive behavior. And adaptive behavior can also be referred to as pro-social behavior. And these behaviors are deemed to be healthy and unharmful to a person. So if we look at that scenario before, where if I was really, really frustrated and I started screaming, although we've said, it might be maladaptive, how do we know that before I was able to get to a point where I would just stand there and scream, I didn't punch a wall? And I'm not saying I do, guys. I'm just, disclaimer, I don't do that. But, how do we know that we haven't moved from breaking a window or punching a door? So in that context, me standing there screaming is definitely a more adaptive behavior than a maladaptive behavior of property damage or potential abuse. So while we're still looking at adaptive and maladaptive, when an individual faces a problem in life, they use various techniques to find solutions by coming to terms with the condition. So this is a form of adaptive behavior. Unlike in the case of maladaptive behavior, the individual does not run away from the situation or avoid it, but faces that situation. And this is usually considered as a healthy behavior. So people who live with a disability or mental health challenge may find it difficult to demonstrate adaptive behaviours, especially if they have an unmet need and are unable to communicate. Now, unmet needs, what does that mean? So we have here the basic human needs. And what we have gathered is ultimately behaviour is an unmet need. So why are basic human needs so critical when we are looking at behaviour support plans? American psychologist Abraham Maslow first developed this 5-tier model of his psychological motivation that depicts as hierarchical levels within a pyramid. So essentially, what this represents is the basic needs of life. Maslow believed that the needs lower down in the pyramid must be satisfied before individuals can then attend to higher needs. So from the bottom of the hierarchy upwards, the needs are psychological. So that's your food and your clothing. Safety, job security. Job security is a massive safety need, but it's also, think about if you could put yourself in one of your clients' shoes, they need to be able to feel safe with their carers. We've got the love and belonging. So that is our friendship circles, it's our family, it's our partners. And then we move up into esteem. So that's our self-esteem, our confidence, our achievements, and respect for each other, which is really, really important. And then you've got that self-actualization. So that's having that morality and that creativity, spontaneity, being able to accept the facts, and live free from prejudice. So what sort of behaviours may you see if somebody was hungry and they were unable to communicate that need?
Whilst people are thinking about that one, Lauren, Michael mentioned about the screaming from the maladaptive behaviour or adaptive behaviour. Maybe the screaming is due to pain, which may need attention.
100%. 100%. That's correct. So it could be that they are experiencing pain. They could be experiencing frustration. And just using the example that I gave, that we may be seeing it as just screaming for the moment, which we are deemed to be, we are labeling it as a maladaptive behavior. But again, it dependent on that relationship, which we're going to touch on shortly, is has that gone from a another maladaptive behavior such as violence or verbal or physical aggression or something like that to a scream. So again, it's all putting it into context. And when we touch on relationships, that's where you'll be able to see further.
And so your question was, what sort of behaviour might you see if somebody is hungry?
Yeah, and can't communicate that.
Well, I know I get hangry, so I don't like to be hungry. They could just go to the fridge themselves and eat things, not considering their diet. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Totally could. Yeah. So let's think if someone has the condition that's called Prader-Willi, where they just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. But then if, let's say, they are bedbound and couldn't access the fridge or the cupboard, what could they be doing? They could be gnawing on, like chewing. They could be trying to give you other signs. They could be eating anything in front of them. So it might be start biting on the pillow or something like that.
You mentioned hoarding, I think. Hoarding food, is that something they may
So
do? Yeah.
and when we look back to the basic human needs, studies actually show that people that have experienced trauma, especially early on in life, food hoarding, it's that sense of security. So you might find chicken carcasses under the bed. Yes, that is exactly right, Ravi. They can start those obsessive compulsive behaviors. So storing. I remember years ago, I used to work with a young man, and he unfortunately suffered a lot of childhood trauma, and it was around food security. We would go to we'd go to Macca's, that's what he wanted to do. So we'd go to Macca's, and those little tomato sauce ketchup packets, he would just have heaps of them, and he kept them all at home. And one day I asked him, I said, what's the go with the tomato sauce, mate? He goes, well, if I ever get hungry, I know I've got something to eat. So that, those obsessive compulsive behaviors, they're real. So it's really quite simple when we think about it. Basic human needs, take away an unmet need, plus a behavior equal what? Well, that's just the simple equation. It's a year 7 algebra question. So how do we find the answer? The answer is exactly that. It is the answer. When a person exhibits challenging, and that doesn't sound much better than maladaptive, does it? But challenging behavior that goes beyond what we can reasonably be expected to manage as a carer, that's when a behavior support plan may be required. So the plan is prepared by a psychologist or a similar expert who is skilled in working with these types of behaviors. Now, behavior support is about creating individualized strategies for people with disabilities that are responsive to that person's needs in a way that reduces and eliminates the need for use of regulated restrictive practice. So behavior support focuses on evidence-based strategies and person-centered supports that address the needs of the person and the underlying causes of behaviors of concern. And they also safeguard the dignity and quality of life of people with a disability or mental health challenge who require that behavior support. So why a behavior support plan? Oh, I forgot to press my buttons and my light bulb flicked on. I thought that was cute. So why a behavior support plan? So behavior support plans strengthen the positive behaviors and personal interests of that person. They understand the causes and underlying functions of the presenting behaviors, including those effects of trauma. They can also equip you, the support workers, with appropriate strategies and skills to address or prevent behaviors which have concerning consequences for the individual or members of their household. They also clearly identify the circumstances under which any restricted practices can be used within the context of behaviour management and to include the appropriate authorisation of this. So, checking your behaviour support plan. So when you have been given a behaviour support plan, it is really, really crucial that you actually read it and make sure that you are fully aware of your client's needs and the potential triggers that may inhibit positive behaviour by reading the behaviour support plan, as this will really give you information on how to maintain stability that will enable and allow the client to continue to participate. So the behaviour support plans, they commonly include client information, activities that the clients like to do, so daily, weekly, behavioural concerns and triggers, areas or different things that should be avoided, physical, sensory, and social interaction needs. So what do they need for interaction? Strategies to employ for positive behaviour in activities, how to address concerns around behaviours, and objectives and goals of different activities. So, why is my screen not changing? So I've mentioned the term restrictive practices a couple of times. Now, what I'd like to do is just throw on a quick video. Now, this is from the Australian government, and it is around restrictive practices. So if you can't hear anything, please just let me know and I'll check my settings.
Everyone in aged care has the right to be safe, treated with dignity and respect, and receive high-quality care and services. That's why it's important you understand the rules around restrictive practices. In aged care, restrictive practices limit your rights or stop you from doing what you want to do. A restrictive practice can be chemical, using medication that restricts your movement or affects your ability to make decisions. Environmental, restricting or limiting your movement, like securing doors to prevent access to outside areas or moving mobility aids out of reach. Mechanical, using a device like bed rails, low beds or clothing to prevent you from moving. Physical, using force to prevent, restrict or subdue your movement. Seclusion, putting you alone in a room or physical space where you can't choose to leave without help. Inappropriate use of restrictive practice is very serious. Before your provider can use a restrictive practice, they must have an approved health practitioner assess you and discuss strategies with you. Document any changes in a behaviour support plan. Ensure that restrictive practices are only used as a last resort and in the least restrictive form after all other strategies have been tried. Obtain documented informed consent from you or your substitute decision maker. If using a restrictive practice, staff and your provider must monitor you for signs of decline, distress or harm, and regularly review the use of the restrictive practice to remove it as soon as possible. In an emergency, the rules are different because you or others may be at risk of harm without the restrictive practice. Remember, restrictive practices must only be used as a last resort and in the least restrictive form. They should never be used as a punishment. If you are concerned about how restrictive practices are being used on you or your loved one, contact the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. Let's stay safe together.
Okay, so they touched on one of the things that I really like to highlight from that is that restrictive practices, it's when, we get to that point where we've exhausted all the other options. And again, there's been assessments done and conversations with all the different stakeholders. And it comes up with the least restrictive form of a restrictive practice. So let's think about, they use the example there of the mechanical restraint being putting the bed rails up. Now, putting the bed rails up would be the least restrictive form because if you think about it, there are so many other options they could get to make someone stay in bed. You've got the old school, you would have seen them in the old movies, the cuffs, the leather cuffs and, chained to the bed and stuff like that. Now, I know personally, if I needed a restrictive practice in place, I'd prefer bed rails over those cuffs. So when we look at, I think I've just pressed play again. No, I didn't. So when we look at behaviours of concern, sorry, I've lost my screen. So when we look at behaviours of concern, they're just behaviours of such intensity, frequency, and duration that the physical safety of a person or others is placed or is likely to be placed in serious jeopardy. And a person may display behaviours of concern because they have that need that's not being met, which we've already established. They could be trying to avoid something or use it as an expression. They may not know how to communicate in any other ways. And this form of behaviour may have worked for them in the past for fulfilling a need. So when we're working with a behaviour support plan or when we're working with people who require a behaviour support plan, establishing and maintaining a routine is essential, okay? This provides the structure to their day and promotes well-being. It instills a sense of normality in life and will give a sense of purpose and accomplishment. And it also enables people that require behaviour support to interact with other people and their surroundings. So when a BSP is originally developed, a functional behaviour analysis is normally completed, and this is the start of any behavioural support plan. And these can take place formally or informally. It can be done over a period of time or in one session. And this analysis really provides that information needed to correctly identify the client's needs and to put in place the steps to manage all situations. So it involves being able to identify which behaviour to target. It identifies the function of the behaviour and those contributing factors. It identifies an alternative behaviour. It then identifies strategies to increase positive, so those adaptive behaviours. And it identifies strategies to decrease those less than positive behaviours. And then we create a behaviour intervention plan. And like with all our documents, so be it a positive behaviour support plan, be it an individual support plan, your care plans, all of those, they are live, ongoing documents. They are always being evaluated. So I know previously when I've been part of the behaviour support plan process and writing it, I never liked to gather all my information in one session because, like you and me, people that do have these sorts of behaviours, they have good days and bad days. Now, if you caught me on a Monday morning, I'm going to be in a mood. Catch me on a Friday afternoon when I'm about to clock off, I'm in a much better mood. So it's about, I've always liked collecting that evidence over a period of time. Now, when I've been part of the process, I always call on my support workers for their opinions, for their feedback. Why? Because you guys are seeing them day in, day out. Those relationships that you've got with them, you've got those trusting relationships, you are going to see more. So now I said that we're going to talk about relationships. And I just said, the support workers, those frontline staff have always got such great relationships with the clients. So when working with people who require behaviour support, it is extremely crucial to use the tools that you have in your arsenal. Now, while Meditech can give you so many tools to do your job, be it a hoist, a car, gloves, any other PPE, you are the biggest tool of all, okay? What do you think I mean when I say intentional use of self? What do you think that could mean? So intentional use of self is really how the conscious and effective use of yourself, your person, it requires us to develop our assessment, our self-awareness, co-regulation, relationship skills and attunement, and those self-care skills. So knowing ourselves are essential as we work with our clients. And especially when they may react to us or to a situation in a way that is unexpected and more intense than we can understand. As the workers in the caregiving role, we must be skilled to respond in a manner, but also be motivated to support that person through the difficult situations that they're experiencing. It is through our ongoing relationships, as well as our ability to stay regulated and help our individuals co-regulate, that we can provide that needed support. So when we look at self-awareness, it's knowing your own attitudes, your values, your beliefs, and how they can influence behaviors. It's understanding our own cultural values, our own fears, and our own beliefs. It's understanding how our previous life experiences can influence our current behavior. And it's knowing our beliefs about trauma, about pain-based behavior, about adaptive, maladaptive behavior. When we look at self-regulation, it's about knowing our own attitudes. It's about our ability to consciously focus our attention, our awareness of our own physical and emotional state. It's about skills to manage our own emotions and behavior. And it's having the ability to draw on memory and experience to adapt effectively in the present situation. So self-regulation within this industry is super, super critical. I know, guys, I started out as a support worker myself many, 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 many moons ago. And I know there's times where you can come across a client and they're extremely agitated, and you start getting called every name under the sun. Now, is it okay? No, it's not. But in that moment, we need to keep ourselves in check, okay? It might be taking those couple of seconds to take a deep breath. Now, I love positive self-talk. My personal positive self-talk is be the duck. So if I'm faced with a stressful situation, I imagine a duck gliding over a pond. On the surface, we can see this happy-go-lucky duck, da-da-da-da-da, but underneath the legs, what are they? Not legs, the fins, the feet. They're going, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. But on the outside, I'm still cool, calm, and collected, okay? So when we look at relationship skills and attunement, we really need to, and in order to build those developmental relationships, we need to be able to listen and engage. We need to be tuning in to what the client is saying and feeling. Be aware of their own feelings. Respond to the client, not react, respond. And be attuned as to how the client is experiencing you. Now, a prime example of this is being on your mobile phone whilst on shift. Now, I know I'm guilty of it myself, especially with my children. They'll be trying to tell me something and I'll be sending an email. Do you feel like you are being listened to or being heard in that moment? No. So it's being super vigilant about how you are being perceived and how the client is experiencing you. Okay. Now, self-care. Self-care is a critical aspect of our roles within this industry. Okay. We see a lot and we hear a lot and then we see even more. Okay. So I've always remembered self-care as an act of self-love. Okay. It might be turning your phone off after 6 o'clock or whatever it is. But in order for us to keep going and keep providing that quality support to our clients, we need to be able to monitor our own personal levels of stress. We need to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Use reflective supervision. Ask for feedback. How do you think I went there? What did I do well? What could I have done better? Okay. Now, with self-care, a lot of people have that perception that self-care, yep, I sat down, I read a book, I had a bath, I'm good. That's not the case. Self-care is ongoing and regular, and it should be put in place as an ongoing task so you can 100% be putting your best foot forward when you are with your client, okay? Developmental relationships. I can never say this word. I talk about it all the time and I can never say it. But reciprocity. Reciprocity within a relationship is showing an interest in an activity that that person enjoys. So let's think about it as, throwing a ball. It's a really nice, easy analogy. Now, if the client you're working with enjoys throwing the ball, they throw the ball to you and you throw the ball back. They throw the ball back to you and you throw the ball back to them. So by using that back and forth, that relationship is building. Okay. Then we've got the attachment. So this focuses on building connections. And as we engage with that reciprocity, those give and take interactions and attachments are formed. Attachment in this context is about positive emotional connection that provides that secure base for the client. All right. This can help them feel safe. Then we've got progressive complexity. So once we've developed that positive attachment, we want to increase the complexity of the relationship. So by this stage, we already know the level of skill or the expectation in which our clients can work towards. And now it's about increasing and again, if we're using that ball, it's about increasing the speed that the ball's being thrown and increasing the distance that the ball is thrown. So as a support worker, you will be supporting the clients in increasing their own emotional competence and increasing behavioral control. So again, as this relationship forms, you're there as their role model, their mentor. Now, balance of power. This is a super crucial part. So once their level of complexity has increased, right, we can then shift that power back to the client. So again, using the ball, the client can then decide how far or fast to throw the ball. At this stage in your relationship, those clients are no longer needing you to role model those positive adaptive behaviors. Okay. They've now got that understanding of, okay, instead of smashing the window, I'll scream. Still not a great behavior, but let's use harm minimization. Now, when we're working with our clients, be it, behavior support plans or anything, taking a strengths-based approach is essential. So the strengths-based approach allows people to take control of their life in a meaningful and sustainable manner. So by using this philosophy, when engaging in our clients' daily routines, you will be increasing their confidence, and then you'll be able to motivate the person to participate in more and more and more. Now, guys, one thing that I remember very, very strongly when I first started in the industry, it was, we are called support workers. We are not called do for client workers. It's that age-old saying, use it or lose it. So if we're supporting them to learn new skills, we are going to work with them. Okay, we're not going to do for them. But with the strengths-based approach, it really takes emphasis and focuses on trusting relationships, empowerment, working on goals collaboratively, drawing on different levels of motivation and hope. And one thing that's really close to my heart is using learning and growth to create sustainable growth. So I know for myself, if I achieve something that I never thought I'd be able to do, you get that confidence boost. And I can guarantee you've all felt like that in one way or another. Now, when we look at behaviours, environmental factors can come into play. okay? The environment may be a trigger for a behavior of concern. And it could be because it's too much noise or too much stimuli. It could be caused by the change of environment or a change within that environment. So it could be, Miss Sally has been going to the same podiatrist for years. They've just undertaken a renovation and the walls are now bright red and no longer a nice bone white. That could be a trigger. Okay. With that being said, there may be factors within the environment that are out of our control, but we need to be able to be mindful, especially when we are in the client's own environment, that we do try and make it a nice environment for them. Now, with any environment, having a safe environment, so by providing a safe and predictable environment, we can have familiar people present, having familiar items and resources, remove any hazards, maintain a daily schedule, removal of behavioural triggers, and transitioning between activities. So it's actually shown that transitioning from one activity to another does create a lot of anxiety in people. So having that pre-warned, knowing, okay, this is what's happening next. Keeping records. It is a crucial part of our roles, everyone's role, to keep accurate records. So it's part of our legal and our organizational requirements to record information. And this really helps document change, progress, and any other concerns for the client. Documents, when we're looking at, progress reports and incident reports in particular, these documents need to be concise. They need to be objective. And we need to make sure we're using the appropriate language and terminology. So, for example, no slang, unless, of course, the client themselves have used that direct language. And we only need to include the necessary information. So documents should be completed as soon as possible after any event. And yeah, so we always go back to, and again, when we're looking at the development of a behaviour support plan, with the review of the development support plans, positive behaviour support plans, we go back and we review all the information, what's working, what's not working. When we look at incident reports, we look at, okay, was the behaviour support plan followed? And if so, what worked? What didn't work? And that's where we all go back, we do another consultation, and we revisit those behaviour support plan assessments. So I have just listened to myself talk and talk. Are there any questions at all? I can see, Michael, you've written remove fights, e.g. DV. What do you mean by that?
Well, with disabled people, or children in particular, it causes stress with the parents, and in fact, the divorce rate with parents is twice as much with disabled children as non-disabled children, and so it causes stress and fights about what's causing the behaviours in the children and so forth, and that could actually cause worse behaviours in the children. So getting in and actually addressing the behaviours of the children and supporting the parents to stop the DV, stop the yelling and going on, would help with the behaviours.
Yeah. So look, carers' stress is real. Okay. We see it every day. And especially, like, it doesn't matter if you have a child with a disability, be it, a 4-year-old or a 44-year-old, you are still going to experience that carer's stress. So when we are looking at minimizing any triggers, it is very difficult for us to just go, okay, come on, out you go, out of the house, you two stop fighting. That is way outside our scope. But it's being able to use your relationship with the, with the client to have those meaningful conversations, to be that ear. And if you are witnessing things like this is where progress notes and incident reports are really, really critical, because that's providing, if we were to end up needing to develop a behavior support plan.
And you could also tell them that, it would cause worse behaviors in the children as well.
You could. I personally wouldn't suggest, confronting parents and going, oh, you two are blueing. It's going to create more behaviors. I think that's a little bit outside our scope. However, there are ways that can be done. And again, it's that evidencing, like providing that evidence. And that's where we can refer to appropriate services and, different departments that can, do a bit more of a deep dive into it. But you're right. There is a direct correlation between children that have experienced childhood trauma, be it through domestic violence, and having complex behaviors. So, Zoe, I can see you're typing. How to balance self-safe and give support. Sometimes clients demand us to do something maybe not very risk. For example, lifting the box, not very heavy, but a lot of. Okay, so that comes down to a WHS, a WHS matter. So, but how to balance that, keeping yourself safe and giving support. So maybe in circumstances like that, I would really, really strongly recommend you speak with your with the client's case manager, because they would be able to provide further direction specifically, and you are able to provide that, context into what's happening. So I know personally, I would be absolutely exhausted if I was made to move boxes all day, every day. And that is where we can have those conversations. Also, remember, guys, this is whilst it is the client's home, it is your workplace. So there are WHS laws that need to be followed. Please never, ever feel scared to come forward and talk to case managers, even your community coordinators, and ask the question. Okay. And never ever feel fearful of retribution, because I know, I've done my time as a manager, and I always want my staff to go home the way they came to work. And I'm pretty sure that's the culture we've got here at Meditech as well. So.
Lauren, it's just Leanne here. Whilst I think Rosemary's writing something more and Zoe, whilst they're just typing something in, just my thoughts, we've done a few of these webinars now, but there's a recurring theme that keeps coming up, and that is just the value and the importance of the role of the support worker in improving, whatever the behavior or in the communication or whatever it is. But the recurring theme is not only that, but it's also the importance of the self-awareness. So even when working with diverse people and now with behaviour support plans, it's just this big inward self-reflection and, of our cultural bias, of our values and our beliefs, and how that might be perceived by somebody we're working with or supporting. So that's another recurring thing. Another one is the importance of progress notes and writing it all down, and how important that is. And lastly, it just keeps coming up. I keep hearing you guys talk to your case manager. If in doubt, ask the case manager, speak to the case manager. So, just some very important themes there. And Zoe has written something there for you, and Rosemary. So I'll just hand back to you there.
Okay, so client has asked me to wipe a ceiling fan, which means I have to use a ladder. I said politely that the office does not allow for us to use a ladder for our safety. Rosemary, I personally would have been going, mate, not happening. So little insider fact, everyone, I'm actually a volunteer firefighter outside of Meditech, and I just spent all weekend on ladders, and I was instructing on the safe use, and I am covered in bruises. But with that being said, that is not okay. Did you, well, not did you, I strongly suggest letting your case manager know, because it may need to be documented in the not necessarily the behavior support plan, but in the care plan, that this has historically been asked. And that's when it comes up to us, the case managers, to have those conversations with the clients. So it's like, John, Rosemary told me that you tried to get her up on a ladder, unfortunately, because of A, B, C, D, that can't be done. However, if this is something that needs to be done, let me know and I can follow up the correct service for you. Oh, Michael, you've been asked to clean the roof as well. Okay. So again, same thing applies. We do have
fantastic.
MMS cleaners and maintenance. Yeah,
that communication, isn't it? Yep.
Yep. I'm not going to lie, guys, communication is critical. And I've been a community support worker. I've been out in the field where I don't have that, support on hand right when I need it. I've been there and I know it can be very isolated being out in the field. Please do not hesitate to reach out to the case management team, to the coordinators. Raise these concerns. Garda, she's our workforce liaison officer. Have a chat to Garda as well.
And also join our Facebook group, because,
Yes.
when you've got a question like that, you could ask the community, and other people with more experience will be able to come in and guide you as well. So that's what we're trying to achieve with that Facebook community. So I implore you to join that. So some fantastic interactions there, Lauren. Well done. Is that the end of your presentation? We have gone over, but it's just been very informative. Thank you.
That's it for me. I don't think I can stand the sound of my voice for any longer.
Well, I'm sure we could. And you did allude to, Michael said something about a topic he wanted covered. You mentioned doing a version 2 or, volume 2 or series 2 on this topic. So can you just let the audience know what you would like to cover in the next BSB webinar?
Yeah, so Michael raised the question if it was an ABA, which is an applied behavioural analysis. Whilst I wasn't going to go that far deep diving into it, Michael, I was really going to look at useful behaviour management strategies. Dealing with your behaviour management strategies, like we all know, redirection, that's great. But what does that look like in a practical sense? And there's a few other ones that are very common, but knowing how to put them into practice. I was going to look at that, and even some conflict resolution, because I can understand, guys, out there in the front line, clients are telling you one thing, Meditech's telling you something different, and you're the ham in the middle of the sandwich. So being able to deal, and remember, conflict is not always negative, okay? Conflict means room for growth. So yeah, that's where I was going. But if you guys have anything you want to know about for behavior support plans, please flick through training a message, jump on the Facebook page, can we get like a bit of a poll happening on that, Leanne?
We actually can. We can do a poll, so we can do that. And if we come across, we can share any resources. So if you come across any resources on this topic, Lauren, don't hesitate to post it up on the Facebook group or send it to us to do so. I've just put our email address there. If anyone has any training requests or topics that you would like covered or any feedback for us, don't hesitate to contact us via email there. But I think at this note, we have gone over, but it has been really informative. And thank you so much, Lauren, for putting your hand up to share your knowledge on this topic.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, everybody else, for attending. Much appreciated. The recording will go up on our Facebook page. And thank you also for your interaction in the chat room. It's really made for a really lively and interactive and helpful webinar. So thank you to everybody and enjoy the rest of your day.